Colton Price as offensive line commits in this class. Grayson, your thoughts on Bryce Simpson pledging to become a Baylor Bear in the future?
Yeah, and his addition cannot be, you don't want to understate it because he's an offensive lineman, and Baylor's going to have to take at least, I would say, 5 offensive linemen in this class. So, I mean, if you look at it like that, this is a huge pickup. If you look at it from the lens of he's 6'6", right around 310, 315 pounds, I mean, you're not going to find guys like that very often who can move like him. And I know that Eric Mateos views him as a right tackle. I know I view him more of a guard, but I guess he could play right tackle if he's able to transform his body a little bit. I do think that he's going to have to build himself up in strength and conditioning. He's going to have to get a little more athletic, but you watch the film. He's a mauler. He's a guy who can absolutely get after you in the run game. I think he moves his feet well enough to be a pretty big factor in the pass game as well. So a very good player, and one who I think is a little bit different than the guys that they have currently committed. I view Colton Price pretty much solely as a guard or center prospect. I don't think he's going to play outside at tackle. Timothy Dawn, I think weight-wise, he's probably going to have to play tackle as well. So Bryce Simpson gives them a little bit of versatility in this commitment. He was a guy that Baylor's been on. They've made a priority for a long, long time. They were his first offer back in late January. That was a huge deal to him. After talking to him yesterday, that really that stuck with him throughout his recruitment. He was a guy who was pretty much Baylor from the beginning. He ended up making his commitment. He continues the Cy Ranch connection for Baylor, which has been very, very successful, from R.J. Sneed to Drake Dabney to Romario Noel, even Christian Brathwaite in 2023. He's not committed, but he got the early offer. Baylor was his first offer. So that's a big pipeline that Baylor's forming with this staff. You look at his offer list: Ole Miss, Utah, Colorado, SMU, Houston, a few other group of 5 programs as well. So a decent offer list, a couple pretty solid Power 5 schools, and Baylor was able to beat them out for a guy who I think really fits this scheme well. And he's a guy who I do believe can make a big impact. And Craig, I know I know on the board, people are talking about this, and it's just something that I feel like needs to be addressed. They're talking about how when we talk about recruits, pretty much everyone that's covered Baylor recruiting, and they see the lack of success for the offensive linemen. And basically there's a pause there of, should someone get excited about Bryce Simpson committing when the track record is a lot of these guys haven't had success? But I think my answer to that would be, and I know Colt mentioned this, lack of stability as the offensive line coach has been a big factor. A lot of changes in the offense, a lot of changes in the coaching staff and the personnel and the right fits for those systems. You put that in with injuries. Injuries happen. There's really no way to predict them. And then, of course, guys leaving, whether it's Eliasa Anderson or Davis Dival or Prince Pines. They've lost talent as well. And so that's definitely something that I think is worth mentioning. And I'll also say this: the 2022 class is the deepest offensive line class in the state that we've seen in a long time. And so because of that, guys like Bryce Simpson are available for Baylor to get, which in the past, I don't think this would have happened. I think Bryce Simpson would have been a guy who would have gotten much bigger offers or been one of the top guys in the state of Texas, which makes him really hard to land for a school like Baylor. And I think in the past that had happened. And I think that you're seeing a deep class, which is going to allow Baylor to have a very deep recruiting class on the offensive line.
Well, yeah, I mean, for folks that say, should we even get excited about that? I mean, yeah, it's somebody pledging to go to the university that you root for. So, yeah, I think you'd get excited about that. And, eventually you feel like if guy after guy after guy walks through that door, then eventually, one of those guys has to be a guy. One of those guys, a group of those guys have to end up being the guys. I mean, not all is lost on the offensive line. And when we talk about it, it's not bemoaning the recruiting or anything like that. It's just in general, it's been a frustration for like 5 years now that has never changed. And it's been a problem every single year for 5 straight years. And that's the frustration. It's not like these individual players. I mean, we outlined it. Matt Rule, when he first came in, he had to take a bunch of just flyers on dudes. He just had to fill out an offensive line room. I mean, there were 6 guys practicing in the spring that had a scholarship when he first got here. And by year 2, I think that number was like 20. But when you jump that dramatically, save, it all being senior transfers of some caliber, yeah, it's going to be a little out of whack. And then you throw in 3 different coaches during that time period. One guy who wasn't even an offensive line coach, and he was coaching for like 2 of those years. I mean, yeah, like all those things add up. And so should you get excited about a recruit with offers from Colorado and Memphis and Houston and Ole Miss and Utah? Yeah, I think you should probably get excited about that. Doesn't mean it's always going to, pan into something great. No, but I think they finally do have like somebody in here who's going to be able to take a long look and be able to have time to develop and grab, his types of guys and weed through some of the just kind of wasted offers that were out of just numbers necessity versus actual talent, probably some cases. I think they're at a point where they can kind of, look to avoid taking some of those shortcuts and hoping that it'll find some success, because they've had to take a lot of shortcuts to try and just get to a point of being just playable out there to help the guys around them win games. So, I mean, I've seen this offensive line make strides. I am not super down on them heading into next year. I'm not like freaking out after watching the spring game over. I think they're going to be fine when the season rolls around. They just need to be a lot better for this team to ultimately win championships. But to your point, yeah, you got to have guys like Bryce Simpson, and the fact that it's a deep recruiting year can only be beneficial to a school like Baylor, who really needs some quality offensive linemen. And you're seeing Elias Anderson. He's thriving. Guess what? He's thriving at Sam Houston State. That's probably about where he should have been to begin with. And same thing with Prince Pines. And same thing with like every other dude who's gone the same route. And that's going to happen even when you have a great offensive line. But I'm excited about this one. And I saw a new commit and offensive line, and then obviously saw who it was and kind of knowing a little bit about him. I thought this was a big-time pickup. So the 2022 class is back. Now 10 commits for this group, and 3 of those on the offensive line. So Grayson, just kind of resetting as we do every time someone new gives a pledge. You said 5 offensive linemen, and they're sitting at 3. Who are some of the other names that are out there? Is there anything to be watching for imminently, or is this kind of a long waiting game in front of us with that group in particular?
Yeah, Craig. So I actually think, I say 5. I think 5 is the minimum. I could see this class taking 6. I could potentially see them taking 7 if it's, again, the right 6 or the right 7. They're not just going to take kind of depth guys. They would have to be taking best available types. And I have 5 names written down. And I think everyone on the premium side has kind of seen these 5 guys are probably the names that have been mentioned the most. And it's Nick Hall, Alvin Ebosele, Austin Kawecki, and Neto Umeozulu. All 4 of those are in the state of Texas. George Mayle is the out-of-state connection. He obviously has a great relationship with Eric Mateo. So those 5 guys seem to be the ones trending in the best Baylor direction. I think Baylor will probably get a visit from at least 4 of those 5. Still waiting to get confirmation on whether Neto will actually take a visit to Baylor or not. Obviously, he, in my opinion, is top 2 in the entire state, along with Devin Campbell for top offensive lineman in the country. I have both inside my top 8 in the entire country, or in the entire state. So those 2 are kind of the 5-star blue chip guys in this class, who I think ultimately are going to be very tough for a school like Baylor to land. But when you think about it, Brian Nance, great relationship with Neto. I know the entire staff has built a great relationship with him as well. He's visited Baylor during the spring, and I think that bodes well for the Bears. And so now they have to get him on an official visit. That's just kind of where things are at right now. So those 5 are the 5 I'm looking at. They do have at least 2 more spots. I would say, like I said, I think they could take 3. You never know if they're going to offer more guys, especially with camps coming up in the month of June and July. They might find some more hidden gems that they frankly didn't know about up until this point. So I think they're in a good spot. They still have work to do. I would say that Bryce Simpson is the biggest land that they've had in this class. I think he's the top offensive lineman currently in Baylor's recruiting class that's committed. But I think there's some big names out there who could end up being, in my mind, are a little higher rated than Bryce Simpson as well, even though Bryce is great. So that's where we're at right now on the offensive line, from what I can tell. I know there's a lot of other positions that Baylor's trying to address. And I know that in the 2022 class, there's still a lot of work to do and a lot of spots left and a lot of guys who Baylor's really trying to key in on, and a lot of positions that Baylor's trying to fill. But right now, the offensive line is still the priority, and they're off to a really, really good start, I would say.
So taking a look at this class, that's 3 offensive linemen out of the 10 commits. You got Bryce Simpson, you've got Colton Price, and you've also got Timothy Don. You've got 2 tight ends in Cody Mladinka and Kelsey Johnson. So half of your class, as it stands right now, are offensive linemen and tight ends. You've got your quarterback in Zach Pyron out of Pinson, Alabama. You've got a linebacker in Carmelo Jones, a D end in Kyler Jordan, a D tackle in Cedric Roberts, and an athlete in Kyan Roberts-Day, who could be, a edge rusher type, or what Grayson,
he could be a tight end as well.
Tight end, linebacker, like all sorts of different things, hence the athlete label. So there you go. You got 3 out of the 10 offensive linemen, a couple tight ends, a quarterback, a D tackle, a D end, an athlete, and a linebacker. And that's where they kind of stand.